Disclaimer: before this episode starts, there will be mentions of sexual assault and harassment. Welcome back to Greek Talk, the podcast where we talk about all things Greek mythology. In the next 3 episodes, we will be discussing the Perseus and Medusa myths. This episode will focus on Medusa's side of the story, as well as how she would be treated in modern day. I wanted to start with an overview of the myth because I know it is not a super commonly known story. So Medusa was born to two very minor, less important sea gods, and was soon after she was born, she was given to her 2 Gorgon sisters, both of which have very hard to pronounce names, and I will not be attempting to pronounce them. Medusa also had wings in some myths, but in others she didn't. It really just depends on the myth that you are reading. Her sisters raised her in a cave close to a mortal village. They also raised sheep, which is kind of cute. Her Medusa's younger life is not super relevant in the original myth, so it is not touched on as much, but her later life is very important. Later in life, when she was about 20s or 30s maybe, she chose to devote her life to the goddess Athena. If you choose to take this path, if you choose to devote your life to Athena, you have to stay pure. You have to stay pure. And soon, very, very quickly, Medusa became Athena's kind of favorite follower. As a little bit of background to Athena, Poseidon and Athena, Poseidon was her uncle, have a small rivalry because they fought over who would get the love and attention of this one village. And Athena ended up winning, and that village, town, city, I'm not 100% sure which it is, ended up being named Athens, which is a very, very, well-known Greek place. Because of this, Poseidon wanted to get back at Athena. When he saw Medusa out alone one night, he decided that he was going to assault her. So he chased her all the way back to one of Athena's temples and trapped her there. He then proceeded to assault her inside of the temple. When Athena saw this, she did not punish Poseidon, she punished Medusa. She cursed Medusa so that any person she locked eyes with would turn to stone. In some myths, she did give her snake hair. In others, Medusa already had that snake hair and looked a lot more like her Gorgon sisters before she was cursed. Medusa was then killed years later by a boy named Perseus, who I will talk about more next episode. And she was killed by being beheaded. When her head was cut off, 2 beings sprouted out of her neck, which sounds really, really weird, and it really, really is. One of them was Pegasus, the big horse with wings. I'm sure we've all seen Hercules. We all know who Pegasus is. Pretty famous. And the other one was another very hard to pronounce name. In some myths, he is a wild boar. In others, he is a golden knight. It's very strange difference. I'm not sure why there's a difference there. This was because Poseidon had gotten Medusa pregnant when he took advantage of her, but because of the curse, she was unable to give birth. So she had been pregnant for decades, which sounds very, very uncomfortable. basically, throughout her whole story, Medusa was very, very mistreated by a lot of people, a lot of gods, undeservingly. She really did nothing wrong. Athena, for one, punished her for something that was not her fault, which is now widely considered not her fault. And Poseidon, obviously, did something absolutely horrible. It's beyond, like, words, in my opinion. That is one of the worst crimes you can commit, because there is no justifiable reason to assault someone that way. On a lighter note, her sisters did stay by her side the entire time. They always kind of had her back. She lived with them for her entire life, even while she was, like, part of Athena's following. She still lived in the cave with them. Even after Athena cursed her, she still lived with them. And her sisters really supported her through kind of everything that happened to her, and they defended her and protected her as best as they could, which I think is a very important part of this myth, just because it shows that not everyone in this story was against Medusa. Not everyone was trying to hurt her. There were people trying to protect her. There were people who genuinely loved her and wanted to see her thrive. And I think that is very, very important to this myth. In this episode, I also wanted to touch a little bit on how she would be treated today. How Medusa, if she was assaulted today, and if she was blamed or, I guess, punished for what happened to her, how that would be kind of addressed today in modern times. First of all, in the myth, she is 100% victim blamed, which is awful and horrible, and I do see people today still being victim blamed, but I see a lot more people standing up for women and men and non-binary people who have gone through an assault like this, or harassment, kind of trying to step away from the victim blaming that we have seen in the past, like in Greek mythology. In fact, she is seen as a very big kind of icon for survivors of assault. She herself is obviously seen as a survivor, but to a lot of people who have survived that kind of thing, she has become a kind of a hero, or a maybe not a hero, but just someone or something to look to that is a representation of them. Athena and Poseidon in this story would be widely, hopefully, considered, in air quotes, the bad guys of the story, instead of these big, powerful beings who are just trying to protect themselves, because that is kind of how they are painted. Obviously, a lot of these stories are about the Greek gods, especially the big ones like Athena and Poseidon and Zeus, and it's easy to paint them in a positive light, and I think that nowadays, in modern day, many people would not at all see them as the heroes. They would see them as in the wrong. I believe that her sisters would also be praised for kind of staying by Medusa and not victim blaming and not shaming her for what happened to her, because it really was not her fault at all. Yeah, so I think that they would be praised, and I think Medusa would be seen as a survivor and would also be praised, where Athena and Poseidon would be, I guess, bashed or hated on because of, honestly, what they did. Really quickly, because it is the end of the episode, I just wanted to mention people who get tattoos of Medusa or in honor of Medusa. A lot of assault victims, a lot of people who have been assaulted or harassed, will get a tattoo of typically Medusa's head or face, as a way to kind of show that they are a survivor and that they can really, really just get through the worst of things, the worst of scenarios, and still come out okay. Thank you for listening to this episode of Greek Talk. Our next episode will be about Perseus and his side of this myth. His side of the story is a lot more long and complicated, so that episode may be a little bit longer, but definitely go listen to that one. Thank you.